And sometimes when you hit record, the quality, it kind of stutters, and we get worried that it's just going to fall apart. But it seems to be okay.
Sweet. Where are you guys based out of?
I'm in Edinburgh.
Oh, wicked.
And I'm living in Ayrshire at the moment for my sins, Chad, just due to circumstances. But we're both originally from the north of Scotland, in between Aberdeen and Inverness.
Oh,
so
wicked.
That's how we kind of know each other. We know each other from school.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
And you're in Halifax?
Yeah, like I guess maybe an hour outside of Halifax is where I really live, but it's just a better shorthand to say Halifax since no one really knows. I live in a place called Bournvale, which is, population like 100 maybe or something. So
really?
Yeah, it's pretty rural, but yeah, it's good. I can have a studio in my house there. Mortgage is cheap relatively, and no one minds when I play guitar at 2 a.m. or whatever. So
that's good. Was that part of the reason why you chose to move there, just because it was kind of away from everybody? Or?
It was kind of a whole slew of things, like where I'm a school teacher, and at the time, that's where I was working for. I worked in the same school for 11 years until 3 years ago, and I got a deal on the house through family, and yeah, I guess those are the things those are the factors initially, and then I had been collecting recording gear for so long that renting a second space or something was going to be it didn't seem like it was going to make sense. And a lot of my friends had studios at their houses, and it seemed to be working well for them. So yeah, no, it's been a productive way to work, honestly. It's got its downfalls for sure in terms of driving to see my girlfriend an hour away or whatever, but it's all right. It's all right.
Cool, man.
Nice.
Thanks a lot for reviewing the single, by the way. That was super. I was like, you get these reviews and you're like nervous to watch them, but it was awesome. So thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for agreeing to do this, man. That's pretty amazing, to be honest. Like, I don't know if Snedds said to you, but this is the first time we've done anything like this. So yeah, it's a landmark page and for the podcast. So yeah, thank you very much, man.
Oh, that's awesome. Honored.
Cool. So I'll try to not be too formal about this. We've got some questions for you, but just we'll try to make it a quite a casual conversation and not just.
Okay.
So just a big warm welcome to Chad Peck from the band Kestrels, who, following the review of single Grey and Blue, kindly asked us if we wanted to do an interview, which is a very cool thing indeed. Chad, first of all, congrats on the new album, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks so much. Honored to be here. It's going to be super fun.
Please, like Grant just said, we're noobs at this, so please forgive us if our questions are rubbish.
We'll be fine.
We've not interviewed any bands or artists before, so but hopefully this will go fine. So I think probably the easiest way to start it off is just to get you to introduce yourself and tell us a little about who you are and what you're all about.
Sure. So I'm Chad. I am, I guess, the principal member of Kestrels. We've been a band since 2008, maybe 2007 even, in various iterations along the way. But we kind of really got our footing in 2012 on a record called A Ghost History that came out on this Canadian label called Sonic Unyon. And that's when we started touring sort of regularly and pushing it to another level, I guess. So I play guitar and I sing and I write all the songs, and I guess I've been the one consistent member. It's kind of like my vision from the start, and other band members have come and gone. And the sound has kind of, especially early on, changed a bit, but it's sort of, I caught a groove, I guess, the past few years. I live just outside of Halifax in Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm a high school English teacher in my adult life, I guess. And Guitar lover, recording studio, gear nerd, avid reader. I'm not sure. Cat lover, dog lover. Those are some things. Yeah.
Cool, man.
Cool. So maybe just a little bit about Kestrels. I was reading an article in Montreal Rocks, and they described the band Kestrels are a fuzzy, reverb-drenched power pop band from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Is that, I mean, how do you feel about that description? Is that an accurate description of the band? And for someone who's never heard any of your stuff, how would you describe Kestrels to them?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description. I mean, we flirted with different sounds. Like maybe early on, it was a bit more like indie pop, maybe a bit in like the early or the late 2000s. But certainly now I think that's good. And I like the power pop descriptors come up a lot for this record in particular. And I kind of really like that. I mean, I think shoegaze was the one that people used to say the most. And it was, My Bloody Valentine are one of my all-time favorite bands for sure. But I think there's like shoegaze can, and I hope no one shoots me for saying this, but it can be like a little more style over substance, like it's easy to just make a lot of noise and call it shoegaze, and then you put out a record. I think with power pop, there's a bit more of the emphasis on melody and structure and, like craft, I guess, maybe, which I think is pretty cool. And like growing up, those were the bands, like Ash or even Nirvana or whatever, that had this like that propulsive torrent of like guitar noise, but like strong melody sort of underpinning the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I guess, I think so. Like if you were hearing us for the first time, a lot of people just say it sounds like 1992 maybe or something like that, which, annoys me a bit, but I see where it's coming from. So, loud guitar, propulsive drumming, the singing's pretty like laid back or sort of, it's not great. I mean, it's a bit louder in the mix in this record, but it's not, screaming or anything that would make my mom sort of shudder or something. So, so I think it's a pretty good descriptor. I think that works really well. And we moved away from maybe the pure shoegaze worship sound a bit on this record, but that's kind of still there too. And of course, just like Beach Boys or whatever, stuff that you can't get rid of from your childhood.
This is a wee bit off topic from what we've kind of got written here in front of us, Chad, but see with regards to the vocals, so sometimes the vocals sound a bit distant. Was that a conscious decision to have them like that? Is that influenced by bands that you listen to kind of growing up?
Yeah, for sure. Like it's sort of the shoegaze aesthetic, like the like kind of like the brutal guitar sounds. Even if you're playing melodic lines or whatever, the guitar sound is like if you solo the tracks on the record, the guitar sounds are wild if you hear them in isolation. But so the vocals sometimes are second. They're almost like just another instrument in the mix in a lot of the songs. And I like that sound. It draws the listener in a bit more. It's more of like, you have to listen a bit harder. And even even on like that Ash record, 1977, that was like a major record for me growing up. The vocals are buried on some of those songs too. And so I just like that aesthetic a lot. And I mean, I can't sing like Brian Wilson or those guys. So working with what I have too.
Definitely, man. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the vocals were probably what led me to describe Kestrels as a sort of floaty rock band. But
that was good.
I mean, but actually, when you listen to this album on the likes of headphones, there's lots of like grunge and sort of low end as well. Like the riffs on like Vanishing Point are actually really quite heavy.
Yeah, that was that song, that opening riff, as simple as it's pretty it sort of like jumps out of the speakers. And that was kind of an idea I had to make it the opening track, just so that it was like there was no like little overture, like sort of like weird noise. It's just like right out of the gate. It's like 100% turned up, and it just like announces itself, I guess. Is kind of what I was thinking of that one. And then, you know, like there's like a lot of fuzzy bass that I played on the record, which helps with that sort of low end, like the foundation of the whole thing, I guess, which is really useful for rock music, I think.
Yeah. So that's questions we were going to ask you about who played bass, because it was previously your brother, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we were here. It's Thanksgiving in Canada, so we had dinner together yesterday, and it was there's no falling out or anything. It just sort of, he was not interested in playing music anymore after, you know, at the level we're at, a lot of it is sleeping on floors and making very little cash, but traveling and, you know, making friends and playing with cool bands and making cool records. But that lifestyle for people aging, you know, getting older is not for everyone. So yeah, and I kind of felt like, I guess when we started, I had a different drummer on this record as well. I don't think I'm that hard to work with. I just can't keep band members, I guess. But it just sort of was like, you know what, this time I'm going to do almost everything myself. And if it totally fails, then that's cool. And I did my best or whatever, but it's, you know, it's been really well received. And, you know, we have a band now that hasn't really been able to play because of COVID restrictions too much. But so the next record, there'll be like a full group. This one is almost like a solo record in a lot of ways, I guess. But yeah.
So see, with regards to, obviously we're gripped in the global pandemic just now due to COVID-19. Did that affect the release of the album at all?
Yeah, it did. You know, we were going to do a Canadian and an American tour.
Right, okay.
And we had offers from promoters in the UK to come over as well. And we can't even do like a local release show right now, honestly. So it's, that's been tough. I mean, mostly like we sell a fair number of records.
Yeah.
Which is good. Having that tour to support it would have made, you know, the promotion a lot easier and, you know, got us in front of some new people, which would have been good. But it just is what it is. I thought about doing live stream stuff, but I don't know. Like I've done acoustic shows before. I'm recording an acoustic session for a station in Philadelphia this week, but it's not the same. You know, it'd be fun, but it's not the same. And I'll just wait until we can actually get together and do it. But honestly, I've been pretty happy with the response, given that we couldn't promote it really outside of, you know, hitting the internet kind of hard. So yeah, it's been all right.
Yeah. And how do you think this will affect the kind of music industry going forward? Do you think it'll take a wee while before kind of touring starts up again? I mean, obviously you mentioned a kind of like live stream there. Do you think that's something you might look into doing in the future? Obviously it's not the same, but...
Right. Well, I mean, I think that for bands like ours, we'll probably be all right in terms of just making more records, and there's enough interest that we can make records without touring and still have that work as sort of a little bit of a business model. I think the live, like I think a lot of the bands that we think of as doing really, really well, it's like restaurants or something, like don't have a lot of overhead, or sorry, don't have a lot of runway before they run out of cash. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary that way. I mean, and it's hard to get people to buy records. I mean, that is straight up the best exchange of money for arts or whatever, for musicians anyway. You know, in the absence of actually being able to play, but getting people to shell out for that is not easy. And I mean, I have Spotify too or whatever. I try to support the bands I like, but yeah, it's hard to say where it's going to go. I mean, you know, like so many people can make records so cheaply now that I'm sure there'll be lots of new music. What it looks like in terms of promotion, yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I do think, like, I know in the UK they're talking about, like my friends over there are talking about a lot of like the funding for small clubs and stuff like that, and whatever was in the news about people getting retrained or whatever. Like, so I mean, that is pretty. I mean, we're okay in Canada. It's not a bad situation here, but that's it's just sad, you know. I mean, music is the great healer or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's so important to the culture, just like movies or TV or books or whatever, but it's hard to, people don't value it for whatever reason. So hopefully the people in power get their act together a bit.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And hopefully that happens sooner rather than later, because I think we're all beginning to get a bit scunnered, to be honest.
Yeah, my friend in Liverpool sent me a text yesterday, and he was just like, it's starting to hit that like all I want to do is be on a tour bus or going to a club, or that realization that that's a ways away still. So I mean, I think there's socially distanced shows. We've had some in Canada. My girlfriend's like an Americana folk artist, and she does like seated shows in places that are socially distanced. They've been actually pretty well attended and well received. But it's not the same for a rock band in a club or whatever that needs the kind of the energy, I think. So
yeah, no, absolutely, I would agree. In terms of kind of touring, obviously you kind of mentioned that you're a high school teacher. How do you manage juggle being a high school English teacher and touring? You've got the Noyes records as well. How do you manage all that, man? Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't have kids. I guess a lot of people my age have kids, so that helps. And it's kind of that weird fear, a little bit of like, do I just want to be a teacher? Like, is that kind of, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I just teach, and that's, music's been so important in my life, and I've had the chance to be a part, like I've had some small successes in it that have allowed me to keep going. So that drive is just to make something new and something better. And the last one is really, really important to me as like an artist. And then on the label side that I run, the Noyes Records label, helping out other artists and giving them a chance to get their music out there, because before we got signed to like bigger labels, the struggle is real, as they say. So helping other people out with that and getting behind records I think are awesome that people should hear. Yeah, it just feels like my life. Like I love teaching and I'm okay at it, but like music is my life passion. It just has been since. It's that split you get. Maybe you had it too at school, where like your friends are all going in one direction, and you kind of realize like I'm actually over here now. So, yeah, and I've been lucky enough to hack out a little career in it. So yeah, it's just the drive, the innate drive, I guess.
Cool, man.
And maybe financial irresponsibility too, a little bit, but.
Yeah, cool. Maybe just jump back to the album for a minute. When we reviewed the single Grey and Blue, neither of us had really listened to the full album at that point, but having listened to it now, it's a really good album, and it's got this kind of effortless fusion of shoegaze and alt rock and indie. There's on the opening, the likes of Keep It Close, there's that part reminds me of like the chorus of a Kings of Leon song, The Bucket, and there's the opening of the song Everything Is New reminds me of Son of a Gun by the Vaselines.
Yeah.
I've got this kind of image in my head of all these members of bands walking into the machine from The Fly, and kind of Kestrels coming out of the smoke and sparks of that. Is there when you're writing songs, is there a sort of conscious decision to blend the sounds of these bands, or does it just come out as a kind of product of your influences, sort of subconsciously, I suppose?
Yeah, maybe a mix. That's not a satisfying answer, I guess, but there's something, if you're done a touring cycle, you kind of recognize like a lot of these songs, like on the last record, I was like, okay, they feel a little like the structure was a little repetitive maybe, or, that kind of, there's similar sounds in some of the songs. So you want to like do something different the next time. But of course it's just like, in a weird way, I don't listen to a lot of new music anymore. So it's kind of those like on Everything Is New, I was thinking of Jesus and Mary Chain was kind of what I was thinking of for that song, the like really, really noisy guitar intro, and then like very simple chord progression, which is like the Vaselines as well, obviously. Yeah, and there are definitely things you try to do, like I said, the Beach Boys earlier, and like I don't know if anyone would hear Beach Boys in this record, but there were definitely parts of like Dalloway with that song, and the final track where it was like the final track especially is like, it has specific sort of parts, almost like the Smile record is kind of what I was going for, where it was really just like left turn, key change, left turn, totally different part of the song, which I really, really loved. And I think there was like a little bit more, like we opened for Dinosaur Jr. and Jay played on the record, obviously. So that was part of what was happening on this record too. It was a little more like lead guitar. Yeah, you sort of see the things after you're done. It's like, oh, I can see what I was doing there. At the time, it feels maybe a bit more subconscious. But yeah, like you gotta make sense of it after the fact, I guess. I guess too, maybe like lyrically, I wanted to make it less like words, like classic, like Pavement style indie rock word salad, and like try to actually. And again, I'm not sure like the average person walking in the street would find like super clear messages on these songs, but to me, it was like opening, the door to my brain or whatever been going on for the past few years. So I tried to be a little more open in the lyrics this time. Maybe like even like Phoebe Bridgers, I listened to her record a lot, the first one, and I wouldn't call me confessional necessarily, but that kind of like really like almost intimate feeling of like you're hearing this person talk directly to you. I kind of was trying to go for that feeling, I guess, this time.
You mentioned Dalloway there. Is that based on a novel?
Yeah. Well, I mean, took the title. That's a little bit of a misnomer. When we started doing the demos, I named each of the songs after a book I had read recently. So there was like 2666, which is the Bolano sort of like horror novel, and Malone Dies, a Samuel Beckett novel, and Dalloway Mrs. Dalloway for Virginia Woolf. And I thought it was a really cool idea, but then I don't know, I had to go with something better after a while, except I liked that one, so I kept it.
So has your interest in literature and kind of pop culture influenced your songwriting on any other albums? Yeah,
like the Ghost History record was called A Ghost History, and it was named after an article in The Vital Illusion by this philosopher Baudrillard, and it was like this idea that like, is an imagined history still a history, or is it a ghost history? Like, is it, if we imagine something, has become real, and kind of just the like notions of like how our perception, I don't know, it sounds a little heady right now, but like how our perception shapes our understanding of our experience.
Okay.
It's very much like a English literature fourth year university student sort of classic discussion maybe, but I like to read a lot. I'm an English teacher in high school myself, and I get a lot of inspiration, especially from those authors who do kind of like weirder, unexpected. Like Samuel Beckett's one of my favorites, and his novels are like notoriously hard to read. And I kind of just like that, like that attitude, I guess, of just going in the direction you want to go, and it's not about like. And then, again, you're not going to hear that record and think like, oh my God, that's like a famous postmodern fiction record or something. But it's like a lot of people, like even in my hometown now, are, I love them for it in their own way, but they're like pivoting they're trying to be like pop stars, because that's like the way, you know what I mean? Like samples and beats and like auto-tune or whatever. And that's fine. Like, that's cool. I like some of that music too, but that kind of like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's just straight, I'm not relenting on that vision, I guess. I think it's kind of cool. And authors do that very well.
Yeah. Do your pupils know that you're in a band?
Yeah. They're pretty harsh critics sometimes, but
okay.
yeah, I mean, they're really supportive. I mean, I think that one of the weird things is when I was in school, it was like Nirvana, Ash, Smashing Pumpkins, like Dinosaur Jr., Pixies. Like, I had like a very limited scope of what I listened to in a very like almost stereotypical way. But kids these days will jump from like, everything from like the Eagles to like, I don't really know new bands, but like super hyper pop music or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Like, they're way less structured in their listening, like more adventurous maybe than I was. So I don't know if they've ever heard a band like mine before when they listen to it, but some of them like love it and they like buy T-shirts and records and stuff. So that's cool. They gave me some feedback on the album cover when we were putting it together. I got a few kids together and asked them to let me know what they thought. So yeah, it's cool. I love teaching, and students are the best part of it. So yeah, it's cool.
They don't come in wearing a Kestrels shirt trying to get better grades or whatever.
Well, they've attempted that a few times. Hasn't worked yet, but.
So I suppose you mentioned Dinosaur Junior there, and you opened for them. Was that a bike shop in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that properly. Massachusetts? That sounds about right.
Yeah, you got it.
And then that's how I can't pronounce his name. This is kind of a problem that we're having when we're reviewing Grey and Blue. How do you pronounce his name? Jay Massis,
yeah.
Massis. So that's how he got involved then.
Yeah, he's we opened for them with this show in Amherst where he lives, where the band's from, and there's supposed to be like a secret show, like where there was local bands playing with like a special headliner. But the word got out pretty quickly, and it was, it's one of those things where it's they played with like a tiny PA that you'd see in like a garage show or whatever, and they don't need a big stage to be like crazy impressive. It was like they sounded like a force to be reckoned with, even with limited gear. Like he was only playing through 2 amps instead of 4, and
right.
It was cool. Anyway, the show was crazy. Like it was crazy. There were 7 bands on the bill, maybe. Like it was a pretty long day, but they showed up, and the upper floor of this bike shop was just packed, and you could see the floor was like heaving under all the weight of the kids jumping, and the guy who owned the shop was very nervous trying to get people to stop bouncing around. But so I met him very, very briefly there, but I met his wife Louisa, and their engineer Justin Pizzafarato, who has a studio in another town in Massachusetts. So we stayed in touch, and Justin and I did, and Louisa and I did, and we went and recorded down there. We did some drums for about half the album, and some guitar there, I guess, as well. And Louisa invited us over to Jay's and her place for tea when we were recording, and we got to see the studio and play. He just like kept handing me these guitars to play, and it's like, oh my God, I've seen this guitar on YouTube or whatever 20,000 times, or I saw them in concert with it or whatever. And Justin actually is the one who sent him an email. He's like, this song would be perfect for you. Do you want to play on it? And he just said, yeah, sounds good. So it was like, it felt like a fantasy land or something. I've had Tim Wheeler from Ash is a very good friend of mine now, and he played on that Ghost History record. Yeah. So it's kind of like my favorite guitar players. I've had 2 of them, so I get like Kevin Shields and maybe like Lindsay from Snail Mail or something. I'll have my whole indie rock trifecta, or I guess 4 of them there. So yeah, that'd be cool.
Cool, man. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I jokingly suggested that they got these guys in because you couldn't play guitar solos, which I hope you didn't take any offense.
No.
But I mean, that's clearly not the case when you listen to the album, because there are some great guitar solos all over it.
Thanks.
One of the things when we were talking about that, Grant kind of built up this announcement of the guitarist from Dinosaur Jr. Being on the song, and it fell kind of flat because I said, I don't really know much about this band. So, I mean, what songs or albums would you recommend for the uninitiated when it comes to Dinosaur Jr.?
Sure. I think like the first Dinosaur Jr. record was Green Mine, which came out maybe 91 or 90, like right before Nevermind came out, or sort of in the lead up to Nevermind. The next one, Where Has You Been, is John Aniello, who mixed our record, worked on that record, and that record is a big one for me. But even the like newer ones, there's like 4 reunion records, and they're all awesome. I mean, the first few records are really indie and like maybe more punk influenced or heavier or something, and then it sort of shifts in the major label period of that band. But I honestly love every single one of them. And maybe for newer one, A Farm is probably my favorite of the newer ones. Yeah, they're awesome. Like incredible guitar playing. A lot of the guitar playing that I did on that record was like totally as an inspiration from Jay's like melodic, noisy, like almost off the rails kind of guitar playing, where it's just super exciting to listen to, and a little bit flashy, but not in the the cheesy like metal way or something. So yeah, he's a huge inspiration, and super. I can't believe he played on the record to this day. I've got to send him a parcel with a few thank you gifts in it in a few days anyway. But yeah, they're an amazing band, and like people give the Pixies credit for the loud, quiet thing, but really Dinosaur Jr. did that first. It's just not people don't talk about it that much. So I love the Pixies too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, they're incredible. Definitely worth checking out.
You mentioned Agnello there, so obviously in terms of the kind of production on this album, you've got some pretty big names out there. Agnello, Calby, and is it Steve Albini? You kind of recorded some of your stuff there as well. Is that right in saying?
Yeah, at his studio. He didn't actually engineer that session. We did meet him when we were there. It's pretty cool. Super nice, funny. He has the sort of his online persona, or like the way you see him in videos might be a bit gruff or antagonistic or something, but he was super friendly to us. It was awesome.
And did you purposefully seek out Agnello? Because I remember I was listening to a podcast called Halifax is Burning, and
yes.
I think you were saying that you previously approached Agnello to work on your third studio album. Is that right?
Oh, I can't remember.
Kestrels.
No, I think that was. I don't think we'd asked him for the third. Oh, yes, you're right. We totally did. Yeah, we did. We got a quote from him, and just couldn't make it work at that time. And he's worked on all kinds of incredible records, like the Kurt Vile records, or like Always. I don't know if you guys probably know that band. Always they're from Toronto. They're a huge like indie dream pop band. He worked on their first record that kind of broke them out. So we had just like been in touch via Instagram, like direct messaging on Instagram or whatever. And I was supposed to go visit him in the summer. I started writing this record. I was supposed to go visit him in a studio there, and the dates couldn't line up. So I sent him a text, and I was just like, man, what do I need to do to get you to mix our record? And he was like totally interested and down. He made it. He gave us a great deal, and was we were flexible around his schedule in terms of mixing. So we mixed it in like 3 different sessions. The final one, I actually got to go down to New Jersey, and I was in the studio with him, and it was, he's been doing this a long time, and the energy he has is like a teenager. Like he had more energy than I did. He was just like, like bouncing around the studio, and oh, we got to try this and this song. We got to do this. And he has all this like beautiful, like analog gear, which, is out of reach for a person of my age or whatever. Like you just can't spend $50,000 on a compressor, like on a single compressor. Like if you're a teacher, sort of in rural Nova Scotia. But he has just like all this collection from working on stuff since like the 80s, maybe even the late 70s. So it was like a real, like the experience of him mixing on the desk. It sounds like a Spinal Tap story or something, but like this experience of seeing him do that was like, I learned so much about making records in those like 3 days I was there with him, just from his attitude and his techniques and his sort of like general approach to making things exciting and big without being cheesy and sort of like superficial, like he really like made everything sound just so good. I'm so happy with it.
Yeah, cool.
The record sounds brilliant. In terms of the musicianship, you mentioned earlier that this is kind of almost a solo record for yourself, but you had Michael Catano on the drums, and I can see there's backing vocals from Norma MacDonald. I don't know what other involvement she had in the album. We already asked you who played the bass, but it was just interesting to know, a little bit more about their involvement and how. I mean, if you've sort of written the songs in advance, does that change once the other musicians come in? And how does that evolve?
Yeah. Okay. Norma is my girlfriend, so she
cool.
She put out a really cool record this year, like peak COVID, called Old Future. It's like an Americana folk record. If you're into that, you should check it out. It's really good. Yeah, she just sang some harmony. Like, one of the things missing on other records was, I remember Claudius Mittendorfer mixed one of her EPs a while ago, and he's like, man, you got to get some female vocals in these records. And so Norma has a beautiful voice and is like so intuitive when it comes to singing. And so I would give her a few, like, say, the harmony has to go here. Let's try a few things. And she's much better at singing harmony than I am. So it made it pretty smooth. And a few times I'd be like, okay, maybe try this here. But she knew what had to happen. And it was like, recording vocals for me is very painstaking, like takes hours and hours and hours, like picking like first part of this line, the second part of the, it's like piecing it all together. It's not like it's not like some soul singer like belting it out in one take and it's beautiful. But Norma just was saying every take would be perfect, from like, we quadruple tracked her vocals, and it was like she didn't have to redo any of them. It was nuts. So that was cool. And Catano, we've been friends for a long time. He played in a couple of bands that are really like important, especially like Halifax music history. This band called North of America, which was like, we were coming up, he's little bit older than I am. We were coming up, that band had like toured Europe and the US and Canada and had record deals in Germany. And they were kind of like the indie rock, like, the top of the mountain in terms of indie rock stuff. And they wrote their own songs. And they weren't just like radio pop hits or whatever. Like, they just wrote cool songs, and they had this rabid, even to this day, like if they play a reunion show, they do it, every couple of years, and the clubs are just packed and people love them. And he was just one of the drummers that I like admired before we were ever friends. And it's just the way it turned out that I was in Brooklyn for the summer at Tim Wheeler's place, and I'd written 4 songs. Catano was like, why don't you come visit me in Chicago? Because I was off all summer, obviously not teaching. And I said, do you want to record a few tracks, see if we can get a studio? And it just worked out perfectly that Albini's studio was available. And it was almost like a test run to see if it was going to work. I almost at that point wasn't sure if I wanted to even do it anymore. I was so depressed about the band ending the way it did on that last record. And it's so much work, and getting started again, it's hard to like get the wheels in motion, especially when like, there are 500 people on the planet who want another Kestrels record. It's not like there's like people knocking down the door or whatever. So it just, that session was like a test run. And we talked about the songs. I was like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. He's a super intuitive drummer. Like he used to be like a music director at a radio station, and he's worked for like Pitchfork and NPR. And like, he's really just like, I call him a savant as a musician. He can just do anything. Yeah. And, it was fun for him too to record in those big studios. So after we got that first session done with him, it was like, okay, let's do this. We're on. And we played a few shows together. We only had a chance to do 3 shows, I guess, over the past year before. None since the record came out, but sort of in the in-between period, we did 3 shows, and it was super, super fun. And yeah, so it's got that like, as a live band, we have that same like jumping out of the speakers sound too, which is really, really fun. On stage you can feel the air kind of moving. It's a great experience. So yeah. So, and then I did the bass, and then my friend Jim, who was also in North of America with Michael back in the day, he's playing bass now. And so we're all very excited to make a new record. Actually, we were texting about it earlier today. So yeah, the future is bright, I think, as long as the virus doesn't wipe us out.
In terms of what's happening in Canada. I mean, from the outside looking in, there's sort of some excited bands, the likes of Pup and the Dirty Nil and sort of rock music, and these massive legacy bands like Arcade Fire and Sum 41 and Death from Above 1979. Have you got any? I suppose you mentioned earlier you didn't really listen to that much new music, but do you have any hot picks of your own?
Yeah, there's a band in Halifax. I call them kids. They're maybe 10 years younger than I am. They're called Designosaur. And the main, I don't know their band structure, but the guy, I think it was the main guy, AJ, is just like shockingly good songwriter and good producer and like a real talent. We did actually a Weezer cover show as a benefit show at Christmas, and I played guitar and he played bass. So I got to see how they worked a bit. It was super fun. That band might get similar pigeonholing like we do, as sounding like the 90s or whatever, but they're really, really, really good. I actually saw the Dirty Nil just before they got like really, really big. Play in like not even a club. It was like a hall or something in Hamilton, where they're from. It's cool to see them like sign to these bigger labels and work with Fat Records or whatever. So I've been kind of off the radar. Like I've listened to the new No Joy record. I don't know if you know that band from Montreal, I guess. They're like a shoegaze band that got a lot of hype early on, and then maybe they've been gone for 5 years, and the new record's getting really, really good reviews. It's like pretty out there in a lot of ways. Like they're like slap bass on it and things like that, which are kind of crazy. I mean, in Halifax, there's always bands like this really healthy punk scene where a lot of people are really excited about, demo tapes and 7 inches and things like that. My friends in the band Dog Day just released a new record, and they were a major, major group, like for the last 10 years. They kind of again went away and started making like horror movies and things like that instead of making music, but their new record just came out and it's really, really good. Norma's record's great if you're into folky Americana stuff, which I am. I mean, I guess that's kind of it for, I think that's all I've heard lately. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I tend to go backward maybe more than forward with music, which is maybe not the best thing. It's so hard. I mean, I used to have friends when I was a kid who could just like refresh Stereo Gum and Pitchfork all day long and listen to every new song and have opinions about all the stuff. And I'm not on the computer that much, so I don't know. I guess I'm not paying that close attention.
What would be in your sort of top 5 favorite albums of all time?
All time. Pet Sounds, Beach Boys, Loveless, My Bloody Valentine, 1977, Ash, Where You Been, Dinosaur Jr., and fifth slots, maybe like Bandwagon-esque by Teenage Fan Club.
Right, okay. You got like that, man. Like you're tuned in.
You ask me tomorrow, I'd say 5 different records probably. But
what do you kind of look for in terms of an album or a band? Obviously, like you're a massive gearhead, like you said. Is production value important to you?
Yeah, and I mean, not all those. Like Bandwagon-esque is not an amazing sounding record, but the vibe on that record is incredible. Like it feels like its own thing. I guess what I try to avoid in my own music, and then I look for another music, it doesn't just like sound like some, you know what I mean? It's not just like aping whatever is popular. Like same in Scotland, but like 10 years ago, every band just sounded like, a 2-piece garage rock band with like the reverb all the way up and like the sort of like telephony vocals or whatever. And it's like everyone was doing that. And then it was explosions in the sky, delay pedals, and sort of like epic song. I kind of just like when bands do like have a vision and go for it. And it's, kind of their own thing, I guess. Like it's hard to do that now. I think bands need such like we were trying to get press for this record, and the PR person said, unless your video is super high concept, like no one's going to pay attention to it. And the idea of spending, say, like 10 grand on a music video, I don't know, that seems weird to me. Like I'd rather spend 10 grand on making the record and not worrying about, you feel like the music's going to get through to people who want to hear it anyway, I guess. And so,
yeah.
So I guess maybe a different answer to that question. I tend to avoid anything that's like super trendy, or I'm just sort of I've always been that way ever since I was a kid, avoiding like whatever is the hippest thing at the moment. I'm not super into. I might come around to it later, but it's like production, melody. Again, like I like lyrics that have a bit of feel a bit more open, which is kind of I feel like that's coming back in style a bit now, but. Yeah, I guess it's like honesty in the whole. I just like the honesty part of it. It's like growing up as a fan of Nirvana or whatever. It's like all of the expression, like the pure. I mean, I would say unfiltered. I know it's a bit more massaged than that, but like that kind of pure like energy expression is kind of what I'm into, and those records all do that for me. As repeat listens.
And I suppose when you're writing your own songs as well, are you looking to convey a mood? Is that important to you?
Yeah, and on this, I'm not sure if you heard the last record, but the last record is like super proud of it, and I loved those songs. I felt like it came off as like a little bit stiff in parts, like it felt a little more like robotic or something. I don't know why I'm dancing like a robot right now, but and so this record, the mood, it felt like a little bit like it's looser feeling. There's no drum edits, and it's supposed to be about like that, like that unfiltered energy coming across. Where the last record is very much like reined in a lot of ways. So, there's there's some moments in the record that aren't perfect, like it's not all like to a grid, or like the vocals are a little bit pitchy in parts, but all those records I just mentioned have the same thing too. And those like imperfections, I think, give it a human element that kind of, I think, is missed in a lot of music these days, where things are so, you need to get to the chorus in the first 30 seconds or whatever. And it's, for my taste, that's a little, I don't know, that's a little weird, I guess.
I mean, I certainly didn't get that impression from listening to the third album. I didn't feel as if it was robotic at all. I thought it was great. I think Are You Alone and is it Eyes Wide Open? They're probably my two favourite. Is it Eyes Wide Open or Wide Open?
Oh, what is that song called? Wide Eyes. That's
Wide Eyes. Yeah, I thought they were standout tracks, man. I thought they were absolutely great. And I would say on this album, as I said, also the kind of vocals are quite distant, and sometimes it is quite hard to decipher it, but it does definitely feel quite emotive.
And
it's really good, man. Really enjoyed it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's so much work, and it's like cool that you guys listen to it even, it's weird to have 3 years of your life boiled down to 40 minutes of music or whatever, but so thank you for listening. I appreciate that.
Of course. I mean, how does that feel after that kind of all of that work, and then it's suddenly just been out there and it being finished? I suppose normally you would have the tour to look forward to, but what is that like? Is that just a sort of a feeling of release? Do you just sort of put it to the side and that's it done?
Yeah, I mean, we mastered it maybe a year before it came out, so there was a bit of like send it to record labels and try to figure out some strategy for the release. And then Darla graciously signed us way to work in their release schedule as well, so there was a bit of that. So, it's a kind of like my typical experience with putting out a record is, it's so much hard work and so much critical listening that I kind of can't listen to it for a while after it's finished, because, I know like every millisecond of that record and what was going on. And it's so like getting the production right is really important. And so I kind of came back to this one, like I'd be out running and listening to the final master. And I was like, oh, like, yeah, I did a good job on this one. Like this sounds good. It's what I wanted to do. And I realized my vision. But then, the release is weird. There's no release show. And, you just get you get the FedEx box of your LPs and CDs, and that moment is super exciting to see the gatefold and see the colored vinyl and see the art blown up that you've only seen on a computer screen. But it's weird. Like, I find it so personal that like I'm super excited when people hear it and listen to it, but my experience is its own thing in a way. Like, it's so personal to me that it's almost private, or it feels like private, I guess. But now it's like we're finishing up an EP to put out. It's going to be, can't say too much about it, but there's going to be some B-sides from the sessions that we didn't finish in time. And then like we already have plans to make the next one. So I've got demos for that going. So it's a good feeling to get it out, and like people have responded well to it. And one of the cooler parts of this record is there isn't really consensus on like the best song. Like I'll get messages all the time like, oh my God, that song is so cool. And I'm like, I would never have guessed that would have been someone's favorite song, but it's like, it's cool that it's reached people in so many different ways. So that's been exciting. To get enough to want to do another one, keep the train rolling, I guess.
Brilliant, man. Cool.
Yeah, that's great. Let us know when that EP is coming out, because I think we're both very interested to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm finishing the B-sides the next 2 weeks or so it'll probably come out January, February, I'm guessing. But we've got some cool, really, really cool stuff planned for it, so it should be fun.
Great, man.
Nice. Well, I think we've covered, unless you've got anything else, Grant. I think we've pretty much covered everything that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's great. Chad, that was really extensive. So thanks for taking the time to talk to us about all this stuff.
Oh, thanks for having me. That was super fun. I was driving over here to get my computer set up, and I was like, it's been a while since I've done an interview, so I'm trying to practice what I was going to say and think about what my top 5 records were. So I'm glad I passed the test.
Is that a common question?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it will be. Yeah, standard kind of music journalism questions.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thanks again for talking to us, and it's been a really good chat. I think I've really enjoyed talking to you. So nice to get some input on what goes into making a record, and like some insight into the behind the scenes stuff. So that's really cool to get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun, and maybe we'll talk again sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. How do we end this? The difficult ending. Just looking for the stop button. I think I just have to end the call for all three of us.
All right. Okay.
Well, guys, this was super fun. I really appreciate all the nice things you said about the single, and keep doing what you're doing. That's really important work. And let's stay in touch and touch base when the next thing happens. And I'll subscribe to your podcast, and it's going to be great.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much. Will you take care of yourself?
Thanks for the kind words.
Yeah, have a good night. I know it's later there for you guys, so I'm going to have some supper. But have a good evening, and we'll catch you next time.
Right, did you take care of yourself, man?
All right, cheers, guys.
It's not finished. It's finished.